All right, looks good. So thanks everyone for joining. This is the CI Tools weekly Q&A webinar. And in this session, essentially each week what we do is we just go through a bunch of recently asked questions or frequently asked questions from our support desk about the CI Tools and go through and show you how to use various things or point out things that you might not know about and that sort of thing. And today we're going to be looking at the Annotate tool. And we're also going to be looking at one of the select objects, the Document Transmittal select object. I'm using Archicad 24 today. The Annotate tool is only available in Archicad 24 currently. So if you're using an older version, you won't be able to access that. And the document transmittal object is part of the CI select library. So you'll be able to see that if you're a select customer. And we brought it in I think it was Archicad 22 that we released that object. So it'll be available as far back as then. But in older versions than that, you won't be able to see that object. But if you're using something more recent than that, it should be available in all of those in your select library. So my name's Josh Osborne, and I'm the product manager for the CI Tools. And yeah, hopefully you will find something useful in today's session. If you do have any questions as we go through, please just enter those in the questions panel as we go, and I'll either answer them at the end, or I will save them up so that I can show them in another webinar if it's sort of a larger topic that would make sense to cover in a whole Q&A webinar. I'll do that. So send those through anytime. And if you have questions that you think of afterwards, or just longer form questions, you can always log a support ticket with us as well by emailing nz.support@centralinnovation.com, and that'll come to someone here to help you out with it. If it's a query about things that you might want to get the tools to do eventually, or suggestions and that sort of thing, that'll generally make its way to me to come up in a future update of the tools or a future select object or something like that. And if it's you're just needing some help with something, generally the support person who you talk to will be able to sort you out. But yeah, so let's get underway. The first thing that I wanted to show was the Annotate tool. And as I said, this was a new tool that we added with Archicad 24. You can get a trial of it anytime using the CI Tools installer. And what it does is it's focused on doing just one thing, and that is converting the case of your text in bulk so that you don't have to go through and do it yourself. So the idea is that one of the sort of annoying things that you've probably had to deal with in Archicad is you might have all of your text entered and you want to change the case of it. So say it's all entered in lowercase, but you want it to be capitalized at the beginnings, you want to make everything uppercase, or you accidentally type with caps lock on and you want to make it lowercase, something like that. If you're using Word or several other applications like that, there's often a function built into those to let you convert the case. And essentially what the Annotate tool is to put that function into Archicad. There are a few extra complications to it that it can handle as well, so we're going to look into those too. But to start with, the main thing that you want to do is go to the CI Tools menu and go down to Annotate and choose the Convert Case option here. And this will bring up a little palette here that lets us, sorry, it's not a palette, a dialog, that lets us choose what we want it to do. So you can see at the moment in this view, I have a bunch of text placed. And at the moment, I have the scope of the tool set to text in the current drawing. So everything that I can see currently in this drawing, that's what this is going to work on. So it is the Archicad text. It doesn't rely on you using specific objects or using our Keynotes tool or anything like that. It's just standard text that you would put down in anything in Archicad. And you can see at the top, you can choose what we want to do. So sentence case obviously is capitalized at the beginning and everything else is lowercase. Uppercase is all uppercase, lowercase is all lowercase, and title case capitalizes every word. So those are the four options. I couldn't think of any other options that we would need the tool to be able to do, but if you can think of any, to let us know, because I think we've got them covered all off, but there may be something more unusual that we haven't thought of. And then the next part here, it says observe case exceptions, and there's an edit button there, which we'll look into very shortly. And then we've got some further settings down the bottom here, which we'll also look at afterwards. But for now, let me just show you how it works. So I'm going to choose to convert everything to uppercase, and I'm going to hit OK. And essentially, it just does the thing that you told it to. So this is one of the tools that's intended to just go through and do one thing and then get out of your way. And in this case, it has done it. It's gone through and converted all of that text to uppercase. So you can see how that would be quite a useful time saver if that is something that you ever need to do. And previously, to be able to do that, you would have had to either retype it or copy and paste it out to Word or something, convert the case there, and then copy and paste it back into Archicad. So hopefully this will be a real time saver just in and of itself. But now we can look at the extra things that we can do with this. So you can see, aside from choosing our case here and looking at the exceptions, we've also got the scope setting here. And aside from the sort of obvious applying it to the current drawing that I'm in, we can also apply it to all floor plan views. So that will go through every floor plan document, or sorry, floor plan, what does Archicad call them? I guess model view. It's not a view specifically, but it's that floor plan story. It'll go through all of them and update all of the text on all of those. Or you can choose text in all drawings and that'll go through everything. So at the moment you can see I'm in a detail. It'll go through and do all the details, all the sections, including all of the floor plans as well, and all of that. It'll do the whole project. And also grayed out here, there's the option to go with selected items only. I don't have anything selected, that's why it's grayed out. But if you select that, select some text beforehand, you can selectively go through and do it that way. There's also two tick boxes here for string properties and string parameters. That may not make sense immediately, but what this is talking about is the properties and parameters inside of other elements. So if you have text inside things that aren't the text tool, so say if you have some labels placed or you have objects that contain text as part of like a built-in label or something, it will go through and it will apply the text case change to those as well if you tick those boxes. Otherwise, normally it'll just work on the text tool. So one of the things that I often use that for is the electrical tool, which has a little label on it to let you label what each thing is. If you use the string parameters tick box here, it will go through and change the case on those little built-in labels as well. And then we've got some controls about what to ignore. So we can choose to ignore items that are currently hidden. Otherwise, those hidden items will be converted as well. To ignore locked items or to ignore items that are on locked layers. So you should be able to control and tailor it to whatever you specifically want to need in each situation. And then with exceptions, this is a sort of a library of cases where you don't want to do anything. You want to preserve a specific thing. So I'm going to hit the edit button, and I don't have any text cases set up here. So I'm going to go through and set up a couple of them. So the first one that I want to set here is jib. You can see down here I've got jib, and it's written all in lowercase, but it is a brand name, so I probably want to keep that always showing in uppercase. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to type in, so just type in the word or the phrase that you want to have an exception for in the case that you want it in. So I'm typing in the word jib, but I'm also typing it in caps because that's what I want it to preserve. And it's set to anywhere at the moment. So if it finds the word jib anywhere, it's going to retain it as being capitals. One of the other things I want to do in here is that you can see in quite a few places here I'm using a little X to denote that it's a dimension, and I want that always to be lowercase. I don't want to convert all my text to uppercase and then find all my dimension things, say 20 capital X 35. So I'm going to add in a lowercase x here, and then just to be sure, because there may there's a few places I think where there actually are X's in some of my words, I want to add an extra condition here where it only should apply if it is immediately after a number. or between numbers. Actually, between numbers would be better in this situation. So if there's a number directly before it and directly after it, the X will stay as lowercase, but in all other cases, the convert case option will apply to it. So that's going to keep those intact. And then I've also got a couple of EX25s here. So I'm going to say that I want those always to be EX like that, and only if they are before a number. And then I'm also going to say that my millimeters will always be lowercase. Those probably won't come up in any other case than millimeters. So I'm going to leave that as anywhere, but you could go immediately after number as well. That should do the same trick because they'll always have the number before them. So that's a handful of exceptions that probably will apply to almost all of my projects. So I'm going to hit OK on that dialog. I'm going to say that I want to change to title case and then hit OK. And when I do that, you can see it's changed everything to title case, but jib down here and here are both now in all caps as I told it to. The EX, well, actually that's title case anyway, and so are these, but it has preserved those changes, and my millimeters are showing as in lowercase. So if I go through and convert to uppercase, you'll see that that's all preserved still. So my millimeters is still in lowercase, my X's are still in lowercase, and my EX still has a lowercase x on it as well. So you can go through and build up a sort of a library of these exceptions because you'll probably be using a similar kind of thing most of the time. And as you go in your exception manager here or from the dialog before, you can import and export. So as you go, you can go through and build up this sort of standard library of your exceptions that you use all the time. You can export those and then save the file out, and then in any other project you can import those exceptions or import them into your Office template or your standard project or whatever you use to sort of base everything off. Import it into that as well so that you've always got those exceptions there, and then you can just run the annotate tool whenever you need to convert the case, and it will it'll already have those all built in, so you don't even have to think about it. But yeah, so that's the annotate tool. It is one of the newer tools that we brought in with 24. And so one of the other things that we are on the lookout for with that is opportunities to make it do more. Obviously, we've called it the annotate tool rather than just the change case tool because we can see that it could be useful for other things. One of the things I've had requests from some customers is the idea of it being able to rather than just changing the text case, actually change the font or formatting. So it could go through and change all text to be a different font, change all text to be bold or all text to be normal, but if it's in a certain situation, make it bold, that sort of thing. That's one of the common requests that I've had. So we'll probably look at building it up to be able to handle that sort of thing in some future update. But if you have any other ideas for the sorts of things that you could see this being useful for, send those through to us because yeah, that's what we're on the lookout for with all of those new tools actually that we added in Archicad 24, ways that we can expand them to help you more and that sort of thing. But for now, just changing the text case. Super handy in a lot of situations, but it is just a sort of a one and done, and then you move on with your life sort of thing. So the next thing that I wanted to look at is the Document Transmmittal object, which is part of the Select library. So you will need to have the Select library downloaded from MyCI and loaded into your project. If you're in a version of Archicad older than 23 and you are outside of New Zealand, or if you're in Australia specifically, in older versions it was called the Essentials library, but the Select library, Essentials library, they're both essentially the same thing, and that's where you'll find this Document Transmittal object. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's an object to show you a document transmittal. So I'm just going to go and open the object tool and go and find that. So if you open your Select library, I'm using 24, so it's the Select library 24. Go down to CI Select library container, and then find the documentation folder there. And inside documentation, right at the bottom, there'll be a tables option there, and we've got a table object, which is just a thing that lets you put in a fairly vanilla table somewhere. And we have the document transmittal form object, which is what we're going to be looking at. So I'm not going to jump into any of the settings yet. I'll just let you see how it looks. So I'm going to place that down. Oh, it's going to drop down to my level 0, of course. And if I zoom in, you can see what this does. So it's put 2 blocks down. You can see on the left here, it's set up the media and the distribution sets here. And then on the right is the actual, I guess the actual transmittal form itself. So you can see all of the layouts scheduled there. And the issues along the top, and then a variety of different revision IDs, letters in this case, to show which thing was included in each transmittal. So the way that this works is that using the schedule inside of Archicad that lets you schedule your transmittals, you export a file and then you import it into this object. It can't grab the transmittal history directly from Archicad, so it uses this system of you'll open up a transmittal report, save it out as a text file, and then import that text file back into the object. Once you set it up the first time, it sounds like it might be painful to do, but once you do it the first time, after that, it will remember the file name and that sort of thing. So all you need to do to update it is save out and then update the object, and it will keep it up to date as you go. So it does involve a handful of clicks to do, but it's pretty straightforward. So before I dive into that, let's look at what you can control though. From my experience of having talked to people who have used this object, a lot of people do their transmittals and display them in quite different ways. So we tried to build in enough settings to accommodate whatever sort of style you want to use. So if I go into the settings here, I'll just ignore the initial import stuff because we'll look at that later. First set of things that we have that you can control are the extra data. So you could see that in the part on the left. At the moment, the recipients list is 3 people long, local council, client and tenders. There's a variety of media types available and then extra documents section here. And you can say whether you want them to be shown in whichever issue. And then you can also go down to define extra data and you can change what these extra data fields are. So these ones that are here are just the default ones that we put in the object, but you can go through and change those to whatever you like. So you can select the existing ones and change the text to say whatever you want them to, and you can adjust the number above each to change how many different fields there are in each, and then you can go through and add in any extra ones that you want. Same applies for the media types and the extra documents. So that will let you control the way that those fields are set out. There's the revision history for the extra documents as well. And then we've got control over how over which issues are being shown. So you can see this is showing all of the issues that are in the table at the moment, and they're all ticked at the moment, but you can go through and choose to selectively not show certain issues, which is a thing that might come up occasionally. If you have this object in Archicad 22, I think this option isn't there in that yet, because this is something that we added in later when people reported to us that there are sometimes issues that they don't want to show. We added in this feature, so you can go through and selectively not show some. And it's also where you choose what the current issue is, so that it can highlight that area so that you can spot it easily on the schedule. So I'm just going to change that to, let's go to second issue so that we can see that once I hit OK here. And then there's also an option to choose not to show certain layouts, which sort of corresponds with the issues selection as well. There are certain cases where you won't want specific layouts to be shown, even though they are part of the transmittal. You might want them not to be shown in this document transmittal table, so you can go through and turn those off here as well. Then we've got settings for the page layout, which is pretty self-explanatory. You can see it's at the moment it's set to be a A4 size with 10 margins all the way around and no space left at the bottom. We're not actually hitting the margins on this one at all because probably in most cases you won't do that, but if you do have a particularly large schedule, it'll pad it according to those rules. And then you can also draw page outlines if you want to see those, which if I turn that on, you can see they just draw outlines around the side. So it's not actually putting this transmittal object onto a schedule itself. It's creating an object that you can place anywhere, probably on a worksheet is where it would make the most sense. And then you place that worksheet onto your layout that you want this to show on. So in this case, because we have 2 pages worth, we would just place it on either both of them on the same layout or the same thing on 2 layouts and just crop the drawing so that it shows each page separately. And so this will let you control that sort of page size that it tries to fit into. And then the page content lets you choose what it's actually showing. So the header is showing just the issue names, and then the contents are showing issue name, date, media type, distribution list, and then on the page break, which is where we're going to the next page here, we're showing all the layouts and other documents there. So again, you can go through and choose the amount of items that you want to be shown for each thing, and then go through and also set what things you want to show on each, and you can set a prefix for it here as well to say what each is. So if you refer to certain things by a different word, you can do that there as well. And then the last setting here is, as you would probably expect, is the attributes. So obviously you can set the font to what you want it to be. The pen if included and if omitted is just, this is what everything will be in, and then the included one is what the current set will be shown using. So at the moment the current set is showing as blue. You can choose what you want the inclusion marker to be. So at the moment you might have noticed back here that we've got these tick marks. And that is using the Wingdings font and this character here, which has just been placed in. That's the default one. You can change that to any Wingdings character that you want, or any other font character. You could change the font here to Arial and make it the letter H if you wanted to. You can do whatever you want, or you can go through and just set it to be a cross, and it's just going to put an X on everything. So you should be able to control all of the formatting of those there, and then you can also format the way that the table looks here. So we've got lines, rows, and columns that are all set to grey at the moment, which is what you could see, well, when it's not selected, you could see was grey, and the fill type was a 50% fill, so you could see it's overlaying opacity and that sort of thing. As it goes along, I think it looks quite cool, and it seems to be what quite a lot of you already do, but if you don't do that, you can change this to suit whatever you do need. So I'll just hit OK on that, and we'll see a handful of the changes that I made. So you can see the page outline is being drawn around here, so we can see before we place it on a drawing how closely it's fitting into the page. You can see that because I changed to the second issue, that's now highlighted in blue. So you see the issue and all of the pieces of it are highlighted blue there, and then everything that's included in that issue is also highlighted blue as well. So it just makes it nice and easy to see that. And I think that was the only change I made. Oh, the other change was that I chose not to show some of the issues, and you can see that those are gone now. So in a lot of cases, C has disappeared, so we don't see that anymore. But other than that, it looks roughly the same as it did before. So that's the sort of the scope of things that you can do with this. You should be able to use most of what we had there to produce something that looks like how you want. But if you can't quite get it to do what you want, or think that we should add in any extra things to that, it would be great to hear from you about what sort of extra scenarios you want it to deal with that it currently can't, because we would like to build this up so that it's as useful to the majority of you as it can be. So the way that it works, though, the way that we get data into it is, as I said before, is by using this transmittal history. If you're using version 23 or 22 of Archicad, this will be called issue history, but it's the same schedule. It'll be under project indexes, and it'll be called issue history for those, and transmittal history for, I think, Archicad 23, 24, and 25. So we can just open that up, and you'll see that it makes this transmittal history schedule. And there's 2 things that we need to do with this before we send it off to our document transmittal. The first thing is that we need the object is expecting that the date of each transmittal will be the first thing that it finds as it goes through the list. So what we need to do here is go and find the date and drag that up to the top so that it's the first thing that's showing in the list. So if I hit OK now, you'll see that the date is the first thing, and that is what the object is expecting. So you need to do that, otherwise you're going to find that the ordering of your transmittal table is going to look very strange, because the tool takes it in order of date in that way. However, if you do want to do something unusual with your schedule, so if you don't usually sort it by date or something like that, you can sort this in different ways. It's just that in my experience, in 90% of cases, you're probably wanting to use the date to order everything by. So that's the first thing to do, is order it by that. And then the second thing is that we need to turn off this show headline option here. Just untick that box. And the reason for that is because not only does it need the date to be the first thing it finds, it needs it to be the first thing it finds on every line. So instead of having it sort of summarized at the top here, we need it to repeat on every line as we go through. So now that we've got those two settings made, those should be the only settings changes you need to do on your transmittal history or issue history schedule. Now we can just save it as a text file. So we go File, Save As, and let's go to the desktop. What are the chances I'll remember that name? Probably not very good, but anyway, doctrans1.txt, save that file. And so now that we've saved it out, we're halfway there. So the next step is to bring that data into this table object. So open up your document transmittal form object. And if we go up to the top level, it actually has little reminders about what it's expecting you to do. So you need to generate an issue history that includes the issue name and issue date, the layout ID, the layout name, and the revision ID, and also optionally the issue ID and the layout subset. Those don't absolutely need to be there though, so if you don't already use layout subsets heavily and that sort of thing, you don't have to include those. But the ones without the optional on them are the ones that it definitely needs to have to make a sensible table. And then there's also just a reminder to say that the data needs to be sorted by the issue date, and you need to turn off the show headline option. So we've saved it as a text file according to step 2 here, and now we're going to import the data. So we just click this button here. And unfortunately, we can't show a file picker dialog here. You have to type in the path. So my username on this computer is administrator, I've spelled that right. And then the title was doctrans1.txt. And you'll see as soon as you type in the correct file name, you can tell that you've got it right, because down here is going to change to show us that it's found something sensible. So if I finish that, hey, I did type it right. It will show us our field mapping now. So once you've got that text file selected properly here, and this is a one-time thing on this placed object, by the way, as well. You won't have to do this on further updates or everything. It'll remember the path. Now we need to map the data, which is something that you might have come across before. Excel uses a similar thing when you import certain types of file and that sort of thing. Essentially, we need to just tell it what the fields that are coming in match up to. So we've got our set ID here is matched to issue ID. Issue name is matched to issue name. Issue date is matched to issue date. Layout subset is matching to sheet, which we don't want. So I'm going to choose the omit this field option. Then layout ID should be sheet. Layout name should be sheet name. And change ID should be revision ID. So that looks right. It will try to guess these correctly, but it can't always read exactly the right way. So it's always worth checking that it's picked up the right things before you do this. And then you can just hit the import issue history button, and that's done it. So we can click OK, and it's going to, obviously this document only has one transmittal in it, so we're not seeing a lot of data here, but it does bring through everything that we had in our schedule. And so from now on, you can go through and you can, let's go through it and make another transmittal. Make a new set, it's fine. add some layouts to it. Obviously, you'll be doing this properly, but that's fine. Close it. And now if I go into my transmittal history again, you should see that we're getting... Oh, did I not give it a sensible name? Nah, I called it the same thing. Anyway, assuming that you had actually done this properly. Oh no, there we go. It is showing. You can now go File, Save As, choose the same file name that we wrote out to before. So set that to text and doctrans1. We do want to override that, so we'll say yes. And now we can come back to our object, select it, and then just go import issue history again and hit OK, and now it's got a second field for that second transmittal that we've made. So that's the process that you'll use each time you need to update this transmittal form, and then any place drawings that it's on and that sort of thing will update to reflect your new transmittal table as well. So that's the document transmittal object. Obviously, there's quite a lot to see there, but it's not as complex as it looks, I promise. Just give it a try. Just remember, follow those tips at the beginning of the object and make sure that you use your transmittal history or your issue history project indexed to get that data out. But if anybody had any questions, please enter those in the chat panel now, and I'll see if I can answer them on air, or we'll talk about them next week. But yeah, thanks for attending. I don't have anything in particular planned for next week, so if you do think of anything, send those through. Otherwise, I'll just go through and pick up stuff that came through recently on the support desk. It looks like nobody has anything to ask, so we'll finish up now. The recording of this will be available probably next Thursday-ish on MyCI. If you just head to the My Select Benefits section and go to videos there, and that's where you'll find all of the historic ones as well. I've got them all uploaded up to last week's one, so you can go through and watch any of the old sessions of this, and you'll also see today's one come up next week sometime, so you can go through and view them later or share them with other people or anything like that you want to do. But I hope that's been helpful. Thanks very much for attending, and I hope to catch you at the next one.